Toni Addinall is a strategic partner and right-hand support for service-based founders who are looking to scale their business. With over 20 years in the corporate world across leadership development, project management, and organizational change, she's spent her career helping businesses work better. But her path into this work started much earlier. When she was younger, her stepdad asked her what she wanted to do when she left school, and her answer was simple. I want to go into businesses where they're having problems and help them solve them. In many ways, she was always destined to run her own business. Because Toni has always been the organizer, the person who sees how everything connects and quietly makes sure things happen. But outside of work, her life is grounded. Toni, like me, enjoys good food and the simple moments around it, particularly if it has a bit of spice. Most Sundays include a long walk with friends where conversations drift between work, life, and the realities of parenting teenagers. She's also in that transition of raising a young adult, something she speaks about openly as both proud and an emotional shift. That experience of roles changes over time, mirrors a lot about what she sees in businesses too. But she sometimes challenges what we're told about success in business. Toni has never believed that long hours equate to better work. She's built her career as a high performer without subscribing to the idea that you need to be constantly busy, and instead focuses on structure, clarity, and creating the space to think. And as one of her former colleagues once said, and something I can wholeheartedly agree with, everybody needs a Toni. Toni, welcome to Stories That Sell.
Thank you, Naomi. What an amazing introduction.
I'm channeling my inner Elizabeth Day from the How to Fail podcast. But I mean, there are so many conversations we can have on this podcast because we've known each other for quite some time. So we've had quite a lot of different conversations. But I actually want to start with how you help business owners, because how I described you in the past is that silent ninja that can come into any business and make sure stuff happens. So
Yeah.
how do you make stuff happen?
In a number of different ways. It's a really interesting question and one that I've been reflecting on a lot myself recently, actually, because it it's one of those things that just comes really naturally to me, and I know things that you have in your life that come naturally to you. And so it's really difficult, isn't it, when people ask you that question? Because it's like, I don't know, because I just do it. Um, some of the key things that I do, so I love listening. So I listen to what people are saying, but you also hear what people aren't saying. And so that enables me to ask some really good questions to really get underneath what's going on. Because I think what I've seen since being in the entrepreneurial world is there's a lot of pressure to be seen to be doing the right things or feel like you should have everything together and you know what you're doing. And actually, behind the scenes, sometimes it doesn't feel like that at all. Sometimes it just feels like complete and utter chaos. And to the outside world, it looks like everything's brilliant, but behind the scenes, it's like I don't know how I'm managing to spin all of these plates. And I can see through that quite quickly. But what I can also see is the a really clear path of getting from chaos to something that's much simpler, because quite often that chaos is just a bunch of thoughts and ideas in our head, and we just have that in our head. What I like to do is get it out of the head, really make it really simple, and then think about, okay, well, what are the simple next steps? What are the priorities? So I don't know if that specifically answers your question, because it's more of sort of how I work with people. And then after that, it very much depends. So after that, it can be supporting with accountability. It can be actually me coming into the business and taking off of your hands some of the things that you don't want to do. Because when we own a business, there are things that we don't want to do. I mean, nobody started their business to do all of the boring stuff in the background. They started to do the exciting stuff and to work with clients and do the things that we love. That's why we started our business. We left our jobs so that we could leave the bits behind that we don't want to do. But then when you run a business, they actually come with you. There's still bits that you've got to do. But actually, there's some of those bits that I really enjoy doing, like defining a process, getting really clear, getting that how do you do things out of your head so it can be documented, so that it can be really clear on when you bring someone into your business, this is how we do things around here. So
Yeah.
all of that together, very much understanding and working closely with the individual, understanding what's getting in their way, what's causing them the issues, stripping it all back, getting it out of their head, and just giving them that time, that space, to do more of what they love. Does that answer that question?
It does. What do you see as usually the biggest bottleneck when you go into businesses and help founders? Where are they usually getting stuck and not being able to kind of see the wood for the trees in the plate spinning world?
Keeping everything in the head. So it could be that they might have a to-do list, or they might have 50, or they might have 1,001 post-it notes on their desk. Um,
It's like you know me.
it's like I know you. So there may be just lots of thoughts, but there's no cohesion there. And some founders just keep it all in the head as well and work from a list in the head. And then I'm not an expert, but I'm very fascinated by neuroscience and by the brain. And when we've just got all of that in our head, it's very difficult for us to be able to process it. And so the brain just thinks about it constantly because it doesn't feel that it's processed anything. So moving from getting things out of your head, and just actually thinking about, well, what really does need to be done. Quite often, I'll have a conversation and we'll start very much with, right, okay, tell me what's in your head. And then it'll be a list of 5 or 6 things. And the founder will just sit back and go, there's got to be more than that. It feels like there's more than that in my head. But it's because we overthink things. So getting it out of our head onto paper to start with is absolutely the best place to start. Any kind of brain dump. I mean, I don't like to-do lists, but I do like listing and getting stuff out of your head. So get it out of your head onto something, paper, Asana, whatever it might be that works for you.
Do you think that as founders, and particularly maybe women, and I might be being a bit stereotypical here, but how much do you often find that the life outside of business influences what's going on inside the head of business owners and founders?
Yeah, a lot, a lot. There's a couple of examples that come to mind. And I know it's still very stereotypical, but I still think it's the way that the world is in most cases, that the woman is responsible for the shopping, the cooking, the childcare, the getting the kids to and from school and the after school clubs and all of that kind of thing. And that's just even more mental load. So it's more things to balance. And thankfully, although I am a little bit sad about it, thankfully I'm out of the school system now. You would not believe the amount of messages come from schools, emails, text message, all of the stuff that needs to be done. This day they need to go in their pajamas. This day they need an extra pair of shoes. Don't forget that you've got this to do and this to do. And there's just so much. So it just adds in to what's already a busy day. And again, if you're trying to hold that in your head, then it all just mingles in together, and then you can feel really stressed at work because you feel that you've got a lot on, whereas actually it might be more of that pressure of the home life, and again thinking about what actually needs to be done and when. It's just all a mess and a muddle in our heads.
Yeah, it's the mental load that you carry as a business owner is so much bigger than I think anyone ever realizes. Like you say, we go into business to do the thing we love, but we don't actually, sometimes it doesn't happen that way. I often saw that with when I was working a lot with the food industry and people that kind of leave their jobs to go and do cakes, but actually 10% of the time was actually making and baking. The rest of it was business. And
Absolutely.
it's not what people sometimes sign up for. Do you, having, one of the things we've talked about before is actually working harder and longer, which you know is my forte. I'm very good at working very long hours and have done it for years, having been in the world digital. You have been absolutely the opposite of that, and you're yet an absolute powerhouse and a high performer. Do you think that kind of discipline of being able to kind of go, I am working the hours I'm set and I'm going to get stuff done, has really helped you with understanding how this can help businesses as well, because it's unusual to hear of someone that can stay that disciplined.
Absolutely. And it all comes down to being really clear on what needs to be delivered. And I've always been able to get to the end of the day and know that, yes, there's still a lot that needs to be done, but it doesn't need to be done now, and that it can wait till tomorrow because I have that really clear view of what needs to be done. So again, it's not a case of just thinking that there's lots to be done. It's very specifically knowing what needs to be done. And I think that comes right back to I started my career as a project manager as my first proper job. I started as a team manager. I didn't do it for long, but what I found myself doing in that team manager role was a lot of small projects and then moved into a formal project manager role. And one of the key things you do when you're managing a project is you do a project plan. You have to know what your milestones are. You have to know what needs to be done. You have to know who you need to speak to, what timescales you need to hit. Otherwise, the rest of the plan goes out. A project normally has a defined end date. There is somebody telling you this needs to be delivered by this end date. And so you have this end date and you have all of this stuff that needs to be done. And within that context, you have your separate milestones, but you plan what needs to be done when. And so that was always a really clear and structured way of me doing things. So I could close my laptop at 5 o'clock and turn off my BlackBerry, because I knew that everything was done. There was nothing that needed to be done until tomorrow. It could wait. Now, I will caveat this, Naomi, with this is about 20 years ago that we're talking, and it was a very, very different world then, in terms of the always on and what people are expecting now. But we actually set those boundaries, and we did it with our team, and we did it with our managers to say, if you phone or email us after 5 o'clock or whatever time the official end date was, we will not reply until tomorrow. And there's a lot to be said for setting expectations and boundaries. And sometimes we put the pressure on ourselves. Oh God, they're going to expect a response straight away. And then I'm sure that you've done it. I'm sure many of your listeners will have done it, where you send something and they say, "Oh, I wasn't expecting you to respond straight away." And it's like we're not having those conversations. We're not setting those expectations. We're not giving those boundaries. And I think that's what's really important to the work that I like to do with founders now around processes and systems and structures. So my career started in a bank. And so we used to have SLAs, so service level agreements. So if you walked into a bank and opened a bank account, and again, this is 20 years ago, you didn't expect your bank account to be open straight away. We do now. There's there's an issue with that. But it would be very clear. They would tell you your bank account will be open within 3 days, and then we would work to those 3 days. And then people would be like, that's fine, because I know that my bank account's going to be open in 3 days. And so even though the world has changed and we're always on and there's things like that, you can still set those expectations. And by doing it up front and knowing this is my process. So if you're onboarding a new client, this is what you can expect with the onboarding. You will get X, Y, and Z by day 1, 2, or 3. Then you take the pressure off of you. But automatically we put pressure on ourselves to over deliver, over deliver, over deliver. And again, it goes back to the processes in our head. So we just think, oh, well, it takes me 10 minutes to do it. Yes, it will take you 10 minutes to do it, but you've got a lot of other things that take you 10 minutes to do as well. So it's around expectations, it's around processes, it's around structure, it's around setting those boundaries, and really understanding what you can do, when you're going to do it, and then making sure that that's communicated well.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear that. I've always been in roles, well, in my first role, it was very much in entertainment. So my very, very first job, which paid me a grand total of £11,000 a year, which I absolutely loved, was called an entertainment support assistant. That was my first proper job. But it meant that I did everything in the theatre and in festivals. It could be marketing, it could be box office, it could be programming, it could be stewarding, it could be literally doing what we call the get-ins and get-outs, and then dressing. So I literally got to see the whole operation behind it. But in that world, it was very much long hours.
Mm,
The show goes on no matter
mm,
what. And I was usually the last one there. Like, often, and then when I went, that's how I ended up in marketing because I was the one that got digital. Um, but usually the security guard would chuck me out at the end of the day, which would be but then, it's funny what you're saying about culture and how you set that up, because the next organization I joined, if you weren't in the conversation overnight, you missed it. And the amount of times I was on a phone at 10 o'clock at night to sort out something that had to go out at 5 o'clock in the morning because of the nature of digital,
yeah.
that culture I had for around about a good 10 years,
Mm,
and in a very reactive
yeah.
space. And it's been ingrained. And I think of how much more productive would I have been? And actually, as I learned a lot more about leadership and obviously became a leader myself, and as well as a manager, which are two very different roles,
Hmm.
I realized it was where the culture was going wrong, because I actually used to say to my team, I need you to leave on time because you're causing a problem. And it was that shift in perspective, like, the problem is I'm currently doing about four people's jobs, and all I'm doing is creating a problem later on. It's not helping me, it's not helping the business see where the gaps are and being able to prioritize, because I will just do it. I will get it
Yeah.
done, even if I'm up at 2 a.m. on my laptop sorting stuff out. It
Yeah.
would just happen. And I think it's one of the hardest shifts that I've had to really realize, and I still struggle with it, is being able to have that kind of discipline
Mm,
to know I'm not giving, as a CEO, when you're trying to manage everything on your own, getting that discipline right, and actually understanding that you don't have to do everything yourself. And we think it will save us money and save us time. And I know for a fact it doesn't. It really doesn't. I waste so much time, which I could have definitely. And I know from the conversations with you, I can see where I'm like, why am I, this isn't helping me in any way,
yeah.
shape, or form. So it's a really interesting way of looking at productivity and making sure we're getting the best out of ourselves and ultimately enjoying doing what we're doing, because no one signed up to a 80-hour week.
No, and there's so much in what you've said there. So part of my career as well was training new managers and helping new managers become more efficient people managers. And it's one of my biggest bugbears. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago and I was speaking to somebody who delivers leadership development training. And I was like, how are we still facing the same problems that I was delivering in like 20 years ago? It blows my mind how we still have accidental managers and how we're not training managers how to, the basics of planning, prioritizing, delegating, all of the things that you've said there. Because what happens is you get promoted to becoming a manager because you're really good at what you do. Nobody teaches you then or trains you or supports you with how you manage other people to do things because it's a completely different skill. And then what you find that you do is their job, because you're really good at it, and that's what got you the promotion in the first place, and you're trying to manage people as well. So there's no none of those leadership skills. It's one of those things again that we just assume because nobody gives us any support and training. We then assume, oh well, I should know this. They've promoted me. They think that I should know this. I can't ask for help. I should know this. And then when you bring that into your own business as a CEO, that's I think a thousandfold because it's like, well, I've started a business. Like I should be able to do all of this all of this myself. I can't ask for help. And if you've come with that corporate background and you've always done things yourself, then you're already in that space of doing it. And then comes the point where it's like, okay, I do need some help. Well, hang on a minute. It's going to take me much longer to do this because then I'm going to have to tell them how to do it. It's quicker if I do it myself, and then we just stay in that place of just doing it ourselves. So it's a vicious circle.
It really is. And we could talk about this for hours because
Good.
I totally, I remember when I first became a manager and it was in a restructure. And there were a few of us that literally went to our leadership and went, we don't know how to be managers. Like we never done it. And this is probably the first time where I've not actually had my own direct employees in a very long time. And I'm quite enjoying it. But I always loved managing, I always loved leading. Although a lot of the time was spent working on pastoral care, like all of the bits that fall outside of work. It'll be things that just happen outside of life when you're managing teams that you're having to then pick up. And admittedly, I would probably, be a bit more of the caring boss rather than you know, the one that's like really disciplined about it. But you don't realize that outside of your personal life, your employees probably spend the most time with you. So I
Mhm.
used to have all of those things, all of those emotions. Well, this person's doing this, but I want to do that, and all of that kind of. You don't see all of that. And that's one bit as a manager, which you never, if you're managing multiple people,
Mhm.
you managing different personalities, different people, different stages of life is a whole different ball game. So it's really interesting. But I'm going to do a little bit of a pivot now, talking about managing people, because I want to talk about the fact that you're now mum of a young adult, proudly sent him off into the big wide world. But I know I'm not a mother, so I can absolutely not understand the emotions that go along with that. But what's that been like for you, that transition of having a child that's now fully grown and hopefully can survive and get through life on his own terms? How's that been for you? And also kind of running that alongside your business?
It's been a shock. Um, it's surprised me at how difficult I found it. Um, it's really interesting actually because I've just got a visceral emotional reaction to it because
Mm.
um there's I think a lot of people understand now there's just so many different levels of grief. Um, and it's kind of like a grieving process. I never say that process that I've gone or feel like I'm still going through now. Um, because on the one hand, I'm so proud of him. And he still lives at home with us. He's going to uni. He chose to stay at home, and that makes me very happy. Um, but then on the other hand, I absolutely, at such a heart level, miss the little boy that loves his mum. Um, he still loves me, but loves his mum in a way of like coming in and is excited to see me. And we used to sit on the sofa and watch films together, and he'd play. He always had a thing for hair, so he'd play with my hair. Um, he didn't like football when he was younger, and he's like, "Oh, Dad's watching football. What shall we do, Mum?" And I think there was one day we went to like the theatre because he used to love coming to the theatre with me. We'd go to the cinema. Like we did so much together. Now he is completely football obsessed, so he spends so much more time with his dad at the football. Um, uh, Obviously, I'm a girl. There's some things he doesn't want to speak to me about. He's 19, so there's things that he definitely doesn't want to speak to his mum about. And so it's really weird. Like he lives in the same house as us, and so I still see him, but at the same time, it's just completely different, and it's difficult to put into words. Sometimes it is just more of a feeling of just it's a real contradiction of a really deep sadness and a really deep joy that I've brought him up, and he's doing what he loves, and he loves his football, and he comes in from football and he's had a great time. And I think they're going to the pub today because they're expecting the weather to be really nice, and he's going to meet his friends and going to sit outside at the pub, and just the joy that I have of him being the young man that he is, but then this sadness of like the little boy that At the time, it's like, oh, I can't wait for you to grow up because of all of the messages from the school and all of the things that go with it. And now it's like, yeah, I'd give anything for a remote control and just to rewind to when he was younger. It's hard.
Yeah, it's almost a bit like a breakup in a way, in a like
Yeah.
in a strange sort of way. I often wonder because I think about my relationship with my dad. Obviously, I can't. My mum and I have a interesting relationship. Let's say that. With my dad, I lived with my dad growing up, and it was we've always had a very open family. Like there's literally no conversation that's ever off the table. So we're very lucky like that. But like you say, when you go through those later teenage years where you're kind of finding your own person,
Mm,
I think that's a really transitional time.
mm,
But generally, I think what you find is once you've kind of gone through all of those different changes that you go through, you come back to all the stuff that you loved originally.
yeah.
In I wonder how much of the outside world influenced the things that he loves now in that sense, like the love of football and things.
Yeah, I think his dad's a huge influence on that. And we live in Leicester, so he's a Leicester City fan. And Leicester City, in t 2016, won the Premier League as a complete like outsider. It was global news. No one knew about Leicester City football team, but after 2016, it was global. Oh, you're from Leicester, you won. Yeah. So I think that's sort of a big part of it. Football, he started playing football as well. And out of that came a really special friendship network. And you mentioned that on a Sunday I walk with friends and they're the mums that I met at football. So football became such an integral part of our life, and it now just brings him so much joy. But I'm sick of it. Like when I first started seeing my husband, he watches every single football game. Like I'm over football now, so I feel a little bit disconnected in that
Mm,
way as well. So I think sort of there's that as well in terms of his his world is football. And that's just not a world that I get.
no,
I just don't get it.
no. It's interesting, isn't it, when you've kind of got people in your life that have passions in other areas, which
Mm.
you're happy for them to have such a love of something, but equally it's not something you would ever have like those conversations with.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk and now go on to one final topic about a passion of mine and a passion that I know you love is about food because
Yes.
we've had many conversations about food. What is the best food experience you've ever had?
Oh, so two spring to mind. One was on my honeymoon. We went to Thailand. And Mark and I are terrible. Like, we won't leave the hotel unless we're dragged out. And we were literally dragged out by another couple that were on honeymoon. They're like, you haven't left the hotel. We're like, no, why would we? It's beautiful. They're like, come on, we need to go out. So we went out and we had a tom yum soup, and it was just like the flavors, like the perfect level of spice, like just when you feel like your nose is just starting to run and your eyes are just starting to water, but it's not too much. Just absolutely delicious. And also, I'm not sure what it was, but it was something that I had in my main, and I thought it was roasted potatoes because of the texture, and it was actually garlic cloves, and they'd been roasted so much, and just the amount of flavour in it just didn't even taste like garlic. So I must have had like a whole garlic bulb that night. So that's one, and then the second one is a couple of years ago, Mark, Ben, and I went to Dubai, and we went to Nobu on our last night. And Ben had been like on the gram, and he's like, we need to go to Nobu and we need to have black cod. And I was like, right, okay. So just I put this mouthful of black cod in. It was just like the most like, I don't know how they made the fish taste that good. Absolutely blew me away.
Oh, yeah, I can totally relate to that. Do you know, I've come to love food experiences, not necessarily always about, and I love fine dining, but I also love the really homely stuff. It's the thing that
Yeah.
creates memories, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is something about both. I'm very lucky that my family are actually pretty good cooks. Obviously, I had a business that was food, but I was never the really good cook. But we've always loved it, and actually, all my friends are very much foodies. So Literally,
Nice.
there is a spreadsheet of places that we need to eat.
Oh, you need to share that with me.
Oh yeah, literally. There's just we just love the like. I think it's the creativity and the interpretations that different
Mm,
chefs and different hospitality businesses come up with when it comes to food. Anything from like simple street food right through to the end, like the fine dining end. But
yeah.
I always like things that are slightly different and, you
Mm.
know, just, yeah, I could go on and on about food. Toni, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this podcast. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Toni Addinall Strategist. That's the main place. I'm dabbling back into LinkedIn. Can't say I'm loving it, but they can find me over there, and on Facebook as well.
Perfect. And like I said at the start, everyone definitely needs a Toni. So go and connect with her. Thank you so much for joining me today on Stories That Sell.
Thank you for having me, Naomi.